Hi, this is the AI Storyteller. I'm Mark. The focus of this issue is an extraordinary peak in German literature, the novel Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is a renowned masterpiece written by the German author Hermann Hesse, a Nobel laureate in literature, and was published in 1927. It has been translated into over 60 languages to date. The novel consists of 3 distinct parts, each offering different perspectives and starting points, yet intricately interwoven to narrate the enigmatic experiences of a man named Harry Haller, also known as the Steppenwolf. Describing Steppenwolf as a literary peak stems from the fact that it cannot be simply deciphered through its plot alone. While the novel's structure is relatively clear, the plot itself is not overly abundant. Additionally, the author interweaves copious amounts of explanation, discourse, and emotional expression throughout the narrative, making it challenging for readers to solely analyze and interpret based on the plot. The entire novel is steeped in a sense of anxiety brought about by the alternating values of different eras and the decline of elite culture, attempting to diagnose the ailments of the era and seeking a path to redemption and self-consolation through art. Within Steppenwolf, Hermann Hesse poured a great deal of his own emotions. Even the initials of the original name Harry Haller coincide with Hermann Hesse. Thus, understanding this book inevitably involves delving into Hermann Hesse's personal experiences. Hermann Hesse was born in 1877 in a small town near Stuttgart, Germany. He hailed from a traditional missionary family and, at the age of 13, declared his aspiration to be a poet, sparking intense conflicts with his parents' expectations. At 15, Hesse could no longer tolerate the education at the seminary and dropped out midway. After several struggles, he eventually achieved his goal of making a living through writing. However, despite professional success, his personal life remained unsatisfactory. He struggled with social interactions, maintaining a certain distance even from his own wife and children. By the time he began writing this novel, both of his parents had passed away, and his family life had fractured twice. Beyond the tumultuous family life, the sweeping changes of the era also significantly impacted Hesse. During World War I, witnessing the immense suffering inflicted on ordinary people by the war, Hesse took a stand against the conflict. In 1918, as World War I neared its end, Germany experienced internal revolutions in the wake of which the newly formed Weimar Republic grappled with social upheaval, skyrocketing prices, and economic hardship. In 1924, disillusioned with everything in Germany, Hesse renounced his German citizenship and adopted Swiss citizenship. Due to his anti-war sentiments and his decision to reside in Switzerland, Hesse faced fierce attacks from German media, with former readers accusing him of being a traitor. During the same period, Hesse began attending masquerade balls, but his background weighed on him, causing him to oscillate between revelry and a sense of guilt. His creative peaks were consistently accompanied by emotional lows, subjecting him to the dual torment of the mind and body. From another perspective, Steppenwolf also indirectly reflects the development of the psychoanalytic school of thought, represented at the time by figures such as Freud and Jung. It delves into the protagonist's inner struggles and contradictions through the lenses of psychic fragmentation and the multifaceted nature of personality. Of course, the protagonist's story differs from the portrayal of multiple personalities in modern literature and cinema. In this manner, Hermann Hesse elevates the traditional theme of dualistic opposition found in German Romantic literature to new heights. So, can the protagonist of this novel ultimately overcome their internal conflicts and become a fulfilled individual? Let's delve into the work with this question in mind. The novel's first part is a short editor's note. As the name suggests, it provides a brief explanation from the book's publisher about the origin of the novel. This narrative technique was quite common in the early stages of novel development. As we discussed when interpreting Robinson Crusoe, the primary purpose of such an editor's note is to add a touch of realism as a backdrop to the subsequent fictional plot, thereby piquing the reader's interest. In Steppenwolf, the function of the editor's note undergoes some changes. It begins by portraying the Steppenwolf from the perspective of an external observer, simultaneously imbuing the novel with a sense of historical context and temporality. The anonymous narrator of the editor's note comes from a middle-class background and resides in his aunt's large house, leading a disciplined and routine life. He commutes regularly, refrains from smoking and drinking, and embodies the demeanor of a good citizen. One day, a new tenant arrives at his aunt's house. This individual, nearing 50, appears courteous and carries an air of intellectual sophistication. However, the atmosphere surrounding him makes the narrator, referred to as I, uncomfortable, and his irregular sleeping schedule is quite disconcerting to I. This person introduces himself as Harry Haller, also known as the Steppenwolf, and requests that the landlord keep his arrival confidential from the police. During their brief interactions, one incident particularly strikes a chord with I. On one occasion, while ascending the stairs, I encounters the Steppenwolf sitting at the corner of the staircase, captivated by the tidy and clean hallway space before the widow's door on the second floor. His explanation for this fascination is that the mixture of scents, floor wax, pine tar, redwood, and rinsed leaves, creates an aroma that belongs to a comfortable household, resembling his original family environment. Even though he considers himself to be living in a different world, these sensations bring him a sense of happiness. As time passes, I gradually realizes that this person is a suffering genius who sees through the flaws of the present era and the shortcomings of human nature, yet refuses to compromise with his surroundings. Consequently, he endures tormenting pain and loneliness. Not long after, the Steppenwolf abruptly departs, leaving behind a mysterious manuscript and entrusting I with full authority over it. The contents of this manuscript reflect both a pathological and aggressive side, as well as profound philosophical ideas, with numerous memorable quotes. After reading it, I comprehends the Steppenwolf's suffering and understands him as a person caught in the period of transition between two eras, losing his sense of security and innocence, grappling with the question of whether life still holds meaning, and individual's pain and destiny experienced through doubt. The reason I wishes to publish this manuscript is because it serves as a record of an era. The Steppenwolf's spiritual ailment isn't an idiosyncratic ailment, but rather an affliction inherent to the era itself. Moreover, it always represents an attempt, an endeavor to overcome the ailments of the times without evasion or embellishment, depicting the illness itself as the subject of the attempt. The second part of the novel, The Confessions of Harry Haller, allows us to delve into the inner world of this Steppenwolf. Through his own narration, readers will discover that this individual is torn between a desire for urban life and an inability to suppress his primal instincts. He questions the pursuit of hedonism and mundane life and holds a low opinion of most intellectuals, deeming their lives as foolish, shallow, and empty. As a result, he labels himself as a man, a wild man, a Steppenwolf. One day, while wandering the streets, he comes across the words Magic Theater on a wall, with an additional sign indicating it's reserved for madmen. Harry becomes instantly intrigued, and though he struggles to find the entrance, he ends up obtaining a pamphlet from a mysterious figure. Upon reading it at home, he discovers an essay discussing the essence and characteristics of the Steppenwolf. The essay begins by pointing out that this Steppenwolf, embodies two distinct natures within him, human and animal. Many artists belong to such a category, torn between these conflicting instincts, leading to a fragmented and agonizing existence that cannot find satisfaction in the conventional definition of happiness. Consequently, these Steppenwolves often contemplate suicide, viewing self-annihilation as the sole prerequisite for enduring worldly life. Continuing, the essay extensively discusses the relationship between the Steppenwolf and civil society. Individuals like Harry, though born into typical bourgeois families and accustomed to living as tenants in such households, hold a disapproving stance toward the mediocrity, cowardice, and escapism of bourgeois values. This contradictory mindset becomes one of the sources of his suffering. Nevertheless, the essay suggests that if he can tap into the power of humor, he might discover a path through the conflicting realms of ordinary people and sages. Finally, the essay asserts that Harry oversimplifies his self-division into wolf and man, desire and spirit. In reality, his life doesn't swing solely between two extremes but oscillates among countless different poles. Numerous souls coexist within him. Only by overcoming this flawed self-perception and allowing different aspects of himself to coexist harmoniously can he join the ranks of the immortals and achieve self-redemption. The narrative of the novel abruptly interrupts at this point in the pamphlet, shifting to an omniscient perspective to analyze the character of Harry Haller. The pamphlet's content aligns closely with Harry's subsequent self-account, serving as an embedded subtext within this section. Despite the narrative's calm and objective tone, its presence blurs the boundaries between reality and dream within the novel, leading readers into a realm of the mind from the perspective of psychological analysis. Hermann Hesse has long been fascinated by the power of dreams. When he was 20 years old and working as an apprentice in a bookstore, he began recording his own dreams, repeatedly weaving these fragments into his early creations, hoping to enter a kingdom of dreams, escape the storms and gloom of everyday life, and take refuge in the dreams of the night, lovely solitude. Starting in 1916, Hesse began undergoing psychoanalytic treatment, yet he was not interested in the intricate terminology of psychology but rather saw psychoanalysis as a means to explore his dreams. From 1921 onward, Hesse turned to the psychologist Carl Jung for treatment, and his writing accordingly began to touch on aspects like archetypes and personalities. In Hesse's realm, dreams are the domain of understanding oneself, reconciling with reality, fostering self-growth, and a form of release that cannot be achieved in reality. Understanding this point is immensely helpful in comprehending the content that follows. After reading the pamphlet, Harry resolves to follow its guidance and achieve self-liberation by the age of 50, which somewhat increases his tolerance for life. However, what weighs on his mind even more is the mysterious magic theater. The next day, he returns to the square in search of the person who gave him the pamphlet, coincidentally encountering a familiar professor. The professor invites Harry to his home, but Harry can't bear the atmosphere of the bourgeois household, finding fault with everything. During their conversation, he discovers that the professor is an enthusiastic patriot and strongly condemns an anti-war article published by someone named Haller in the newspaper, not realizing that this Haller is the old friend Harry Haller sitting right in front of him. Harry finally can't endure any longer and abruptly leaves, declaring his farewell to the moral world, the educated world, and the bourgeois world. He wanders aimlessly on the streets, contemplating suicide as soon as he gets home, yet unable to muster the courage, constantly delaying his return. It's not until deep into the night when he stumbles into an unfamiliar tavern and encounters a young woman named Hermann, who imparts some comforting words and eases his heart a bit. While waiting for her to return from dancing, Harry dozes off in the small tavern, dreaming of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, his long-admired figure, and even arguing with him. Upon waking, he gradually dismisses thoughts of suicide. A few days later, the two arrange to have dinner together. During the meal, Harry notices that Hermann occasionally displays traits of both genders, briefly transforming into the image of Hermann, a childhood friend of Harry's. Hermann explains that she is a mirror to Harry, containing something within herself that allows her to understand Harry, compensating for the aspects he lacks. This is why Harry trusts her immediately upon meeting and follows her advice. However, Hermann also states that Harry will ultimately have to kill himself. It's a task he must accomplish. For now, though, this isn't an issue he needs to focus on. The immediate goal is for Harry to learn how to dance from her. Hermann instructs him to purchase a phonograph and places it in her studio, strictly training him in dance. They attend a ball together, and Hermann introduces Harry to a saxophone player named Pablo and even arranges for him to have a lover. The turning point is set for a costume ball in 3 weeks. Harry begins to embrace indulgence, realizing that alongside the sublime beauty he has long yearned for, there exists another kind of beauty in worldly life. More importantly, the dance music from the phonograph, while disrupting the tranquility of his study, shatters his confined world, leading him to realize that the claim in the pamphlet about individuals having thousands of souls is accurate. Besides the pre-existing facets of his personality, new traits are unearthed daily, dismantling the self-esteem of the dominant Mr. Haller. Harry has to admit that he has been deceiving himself all along. Despite professing reason and humanity outwardly, deep down, he is someone who desires a comfortable life as a property owner. In the end, he's merely pretending to be noble. His ultimate goal isn't to save the world, but to make his own life more bearable. The old Harry and the continuously emerging new Harry sometimes fiercely argue, other times coexist harmoniously. Though Harry is on the brink of collapse due to this inner turmoil, it also opens up new possibilities of love and life for him, bringing a fleeting sense of happiness. The night of the all-night ball finally arrived. Unexpectedly, Harry received an invitation to the Magic Theater, and he eagerly anticipated the revelry throughout the entire night. At last, the ball came to an end, and Pablo, who had been playing the saxophone moments ago, transformed into Harry's guide. Pablo leads Harry into a theater, where corridors on either side lead to numerous tightly closed box doors. Pablo warns Harry that upon entering the Magic Theater, he must shed his supposed persona, relinquish his past self, or else wandering through it aimlessly will be of no use to him. Pablo takes out a small mirror, allowing Harry to glimpse the inner Steppenwolf within himself. Pablo proclaims to him that the perfect world Harry yearns for actually lies within his own heart. Then, using his own mirror, Pablo teaches Harry how to smile and instructs him to explore the mysteries behind the doors. In a larger mirror on the wall, Harry sees countless fragments of himself, each running toward a different door. He discovers that each door bears a highly enticing sign, and behind each one lies an entirely new fantasy world. First, he joins a friend from his school days in eradicating all the cars in the world. In the character structure guidance room, he learns how to play a game called Life. He then watches a training session where humans and wolves exchange identities. Harry revisits every stage of love in his life, relearning the capacity to love. Finally, he encounters the topic of how to kill out of love. He recalls Hermann's prediction and steps through the door, only to find himself facing Mozart, the figure he has long admired. Mozart shows him the downfall of great musicians and declares that Harry's articles are meaningless plagiarisms. Enraged, Harry storms out, finds the last door, and sees Hermann and Pablo lying together asleep. Overcome with jealousy, he stabs Hermann, and the coldness of death emanates from her body, transforming into beautiful music. Just as Harry believes he's nearing eternity, Mozart appears again, bringing with him music playing from a radio broadcast. The quality of this music is utterly poor, leaving Harry in deep despair. He implores Mozart not to let machines destroy art. However, Mozart states that killing Hermann and the destruction caused by radios to musical aesthetics are fundamentally the same. He ridicules Harry's attempt to seek redemption through death as escapism and sentences him to a punishment of eternal life, to be mocked by the inhabitants of the Magic Theater. Moreover, he must learn to listen to the music from the radio, distinguishing between the noble and the absurd aspects within it. Just as Harry is about to refuse, Mozart suddenly transforms back into Pablo's form and assures him that one day, Harry will learn to play his part, master the game of life, and learn to laugh. Completing the journey through the Magic Theater feels like riding a roller coaster, which is no wonder that the surreal and half-real extraordinary experiences within it resonated strongly with the hippie generation of the 1960s. It's important to note that the novel enjoyed a fervent following among the counterculture of the 1960s in the United States, with Hermann Hesse even being hailed as a spiritual idol by many. Unfortunately, most of them only saw the mesmerizing side of the plot, overlooking the profound meanings behind these symbolic elements. As we discussed in the previous analysis, we highlighted the connection between the novel and psychoanalytic theories, with the mirror serving as a conduit linking the two. Beyond the myriad mirrors projecting various facets of Harry's inner self within the Magic Theater, the character of Hermann also serves as Harry's mirror, continuously awakening suppressed aspects of his subconscious from his growing years and propelling his spiritual transformation. Pablo assumes the role of a guide, leading Harry to the moment where, according to Jungian theory, he sheds the mask of persona within the Magic Theater. In doing so, he liberates himself from the superficial pretenses defined by society to conceal his true self, embracing a new language of humor, as championed in the Little Book, to counter the prevailing militaristic discourse of the time. It's worth noting that within the novel's fantasy, there are recurring figures referred to as the Immortals, represented by the likes of Goethe and Mozart. For someone like Hesse, an intellectual with traditional elite consciousness, these figures represent irreplaceable pinnacles within the realm of German cultural spirit. What causes Hesse anguish is the distortion and manipulation of this elite culture by German militarism during wartime. The intertwining of culture with war and the notions of nationalism became deeply entwined, which Hesse perceived as a profanity and a colossal irony upon culture. In a conversation with Hermann, Harry sharply asserts, "Every day they are instilled, reminded, incited, stirred up with discontent and anger, and the purpose and outcome of it all is the outbreak of another war, and the next war may be even more terrifying than the last." Every day, thousands upon thousands of people are enthusiastically preparing for the next war. Unfortunately, Hesse's allegory spoken through Harry Steppenwolf came true in the form of World War II shortly after. In addition, within the novel, we also observe a positive clash between elite culture and popular culture. Music serves as a prominent example in Steppenwolf. However, which kind of music? Mozart and jazz, saxophones and sopranos, they collectively composed the symphony of the era. Through the character of Harry Haller, Hermann Hesse effectively captures the spirit of the post-World War I Weimar Republic, a society of citizens grappling with uncertainty, confusion, fractured individual consciousness, and indulgence. It was only 9 years after the publication of Steppenwolf that Walter Benjamin would publish his groundbreaking essay The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. Yet Hesse may have even earlier identified the phenomenon of technology pulling high art from its pedestal. He foresaw the splintering and antagonism in the modern fragmented society becoming increasingly evident. This gave rise to a new kind of individual, severed from the old order, yet attempting to harness the opportunities presented by these new technologies for their liberation. If not freedom, then at least a form of numbness could be achieved. Hesse also foresaw what the new century would bring: a new spiritual state, an era where the economy reigns supreme and even time is dominated. As early as 1923, in an article, Hesse wrote, "Civilization has hollowed out the root of this tranquil pastoral pleasure. Soon, machines will triumph over hands, money will triumph over morals, rational economics will triumph over rural joys, and no one knows exactly who is right or wrong." From this perspective, Steppenwolf can be seen as Hesse's attempt to inquire how an individual's creative aspirations can persevere in a mass culture environment dominated by cheap sentimentality. Lastly, let us return to the remedy that the novel offers to the individual in the face of an era in crisis: humor. Why does Hesse view humor as the way to save himself, and perhaps even the only way to rescue this troubled era? Early on in the little book, he asserts, in the illusory and evanescent atmosphere of humor, the tangled and chaotic ideals of all the Steppenwolves can be realized. This humor may be humanity's most quintessential and ingenious accomplishment. Humor grants him the capacity for self-mockery, enabling him to view the madness and violence of the era from an outsider's perspective. Yet, he does not employ a tone of derision and sarcasm. Rather, he approaches it with compassion and anticipation for those deeply immersed. He points out the bloodthirsty and destructive aspects within everyone's psyche, while also implying that through art and self-deprecating humor, we may be able to tame this wildness. Although shadows of absurdity and despair permeate Hesse's humor, it also points to the facet of classical times: a bright, playful satire that infuses laughter into empty souls, rejuvenating spirit and vitality, thus regaining enthusiasm for life and the future. Beyond the self-mockery of an outsider's perspective, Hesse indicates another potential path: using humor to break through the paradoxical relationship between individual and society, the yearning for belonging juxtaposed with inevitable detachment. In the face of seemingly overwhelming external forces, this empowers individuals to follow their true selves, seeking new spiritual havens. It is precisely because of this that Steppenwolf, over 90 years after its publication, continues to radiate vitality, guiding younger generations of readers to embrace life. Finally, let's recap the key points from this issue's content. 1. Steppenwolf is a modern intellectual spiritual autobiography deeply entangled in the upheavals of its era and individual crises. Through its 3 distinct yet complementary perspectives, the novel delves into the personal struggles amid a world in turmoil and the contradictions between the individual and external social groups. 2. The novel reflects Hermann Hesse's own spiritual crisis during the period and the scars left by the war, but it goes beyond lamentation and self-pity. Instead, it leads readers into a world of psyche and dreams from a psychological analysis perspective, exploring the creative power within dreams and consciousness. It endeavors to use writing to seek solutions to individual crises and societal maladies. 3. The novel views humor as the sole path to restore faith and hope for humanity in an uncertain era. It enables individuals to possess self-mockery and simultaneously provides an outsider's perspective to observe the madness and violence of the times. This allows those trapped in the dilemma between individuality and community to find a possible path towards reconciliation. Well, that concludes the content for this episode. If you enjoyed my video, please click like, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. Thank you.